Yate, she a Jean Billie in Ske, Torichi in Schlingo, a Toadlin, but she's chin, the net in Schlin, to Sozen Dishkish Dan Nasha. Hello, my name is Jean Billie, and I am Navajo, Tene, from Crown Point, New Mexico, born and raised on the Navajo Reservation. I am an artist and a jeweler. I am involved in several organizations educating the public about Native American arts. Native Jeweler Society and CIAC, Council for Indigenous Arts and Culture, a nonprofit organization. Art's always been in my life ever since I remember. I've been drawing on my textbooks in school. I've drawn on my test papers. Um, it was just part of my life. And then recently, not recently, I would say in the early 90s, I invested into some silver. And one day I picked up the hammer and a stamp, and it fit very well in my hands. And it began from there. I just started to create spontaneously. I taught myself how to do silverware, goldsmithing, everything is self-taught. And I'm still teaching myself many, many different art forms regarding the metals. Recently, I self-taught myself foil forming technique just so I can make metal look like a real leaf that falls from the trees in the fall. So I'll be working on leaves this fall out of metal. And I'm just constantly creating. I do sculptures as well out of metal. And most of my jewelry is sculptural related. As you can see, most of people who know my stuff, um, it's just all spontaneously created. And that's when I felt that there was a need to expose my art to the public. And surprisingly, it was a tough road to follow because my art was different than other art. It wasn't considered, many considered it art and jewelry, but it wasn't really into the Native American category. I added turquoise to my jewelry, and there began the life of a Native American jeweler. Like many Native American families, I grew up with a room full of artists in a sense of speaking. My dad was, he drew a lot of beautiful horses. He became a silversmith as well. He was a self-taught silversmith. Matter of fact, I still utilize some of the tools that he had left behind. And I treasure them so much that it got to the point that I just display them now. And my mom grew up as a rug weaver, as a sheep herder. Um, she grew up in a large family, and back in those days, families were chosen to go to school, who would go to school and who would stay home and take care of the sheep. My mother was the one that ended up staying home and tended to the flock. And from there, she just developed everything about the weaving techniques, and she became a weaver. Everything she learned and absorbed as a Navajo woman that she passed down to her children. So I know how to weave. I've done the looms. We used to shear our sheeps. We made our own wool. We dyed our own natural colored wool. We did everything from scratch. And that's how I still create my silver, is literally from scratch. Because I believe everything is more admired and everything is more appreciated if it's made from literally nothing. You know, a lot of people have prefabricated stuff these days in jewelry make. They have machineries that help them produce. They have a lot of other techniques, and people are still inventing new technology to better their jewelry and their knowledge in the metals. But I tend to take it backwards. I am taking it backwards. I use minimal tools. I'm still using a bead tank and a acetylene torch from my father. I still use his handsaw. A lot of people have all these magnificent technology tools that I totally admire, but I cannot bring myself to utilize them because it does not satisfy my heart. And I feel like I'm disowning the culture when I allow myself to utilize the new technologies. I'm not saying technology is bad. I'm saying that I just chose to do stuff the older ways, and just like my mother and father did. And that's the way I work, and that's how I was taught. One I've cling on to is just to spontaneously create. I see images all the time. There's ideas flowing through the head all the time. You see images when you go out driving. Just looking out the window, there's images everywhere. And one thing I like to challenge myself to do is try to create some of these images out of metal. And there's different butterflies out there. There's different birds and so forth. Try to create that out of metal. And then for me, in order to do that, I have to start to create a process with a blank canvas. I consider the silver and all the raw material I have in front of me as a blank canvas. And I do not sketch. I have a problem with sketching. I do not know why, because I sketch something here and I create here, it totally does not look like what I originally sketched. So I totally put the sketching aside and I started creating and just have it build upon itself. And that's how I create some of my art. I have a general idea of what it's supposed to be, and it builds itself. And I have a problem sometimes of stopping until the piece tells me to stop. It did enough. It's a relationship.